how quickly it shows up. Alrighty, we'll just wait and see to make sure it goes through. Streaming live Twitch, 20 seconds. Streaming makes me nervous. Just kidding, it doesn't make me nervous at all. Technology has come so far, and there isn't going to be any problems. Last live just now. There we go. Alright, looks like we are live. And, sweet. Let's go into it and turn the volume down so I don't get some echo. Hello, Duke. SM60, yep, live indeed. Zeta, hello, it is story time. Awesome. I know it's a great data pad. It's nice and small. You know, fits in my pockets that I have on my suit. It's perfect. Oh man. So I am Spartan Jeff 293. I'll be reading as part of Buckets and Books. I love saying boo because I am a Halloween fan. Buckets and Books with a 405th, and I'll be reading the next two chapters, chapters 6 and 7. Chapters 6 and 7 in Fall of Reach. It's a mission log that a good couple of my good partners engaged in. So without further ado, I'm going to get into that, but first I want to make sure mic volume, is it good? I've tweaked it a couple of times. You know, microphones, they didn't come far along. They've only come so far. So if you guys could let me know if this is good, sounding good. Alright, Crimson Viper, I will take that and I will get right into this story. Thank you very much. So, Chapter 6, we are at 11:30 hours, March 9th, 2525, Military Calendar, Epsilon Iridani System, Office of Naval Intelligence, Medical Facility, in orbit around Planet Reach. I want that transmission decoded now, Dr. Halsey snapped at Deja. The encryption scheme is extremely complex, replied Deja with a hint of irritation in her normally glass-smooth voice. I don't even know why they bothered. Who else but Beta 5 Division even has the resources to use this data? Spare me the banter, Deja, I'm not in the mood. Just concentrate on the decryption. Yes, Doctor. Dr. Halsey paced across the antiseptic white tile of the observation room. On one side of the room was filled floor to ceiling with terminals that monitored the vital signs of the children. Test subjects, she corrected herself. They displayed drug uptake rates, winking green, blue, and red status indicators, EKGs, pulse rates, and 100 other pieces of medical data. The other side of the observation room overlooked dozens of translucent domes, windows into the surgical bays on the level below. Each bay was a sealed environment staffed with the best surgeons and biotechnicians that the Office of Naval Intelligence could drum up. The boys had been scrubbed and irradiated and were in the final preparation stages to receive and hold these special biohazardous materials. Done, Deja announced. The file awaits your inspection, Doctor. Dr. Halsey stopped her pacing and sat. On my glasses, please, Deja. Her glasses scanned retinal and brain patterns, and the security barrier of the file lifted. With a blink of her eyes, she opened the file. It read the following: United Nations Space Command Priority Transmission 09872H-908. Encryption code, red, public key, file excised, access omega. From Admiral Cyrus Jerome, Chief Medical Officer, UNSC Research Station Hopeful. To Dr. Catherine Elizabeth Halsey, MD, PhD, Special Civilian Consultant, Civilian Identification Number 10141-026 SR B4695. Subject mitigating factors and relative biological risks associated with the queried experimental medical procedures. Classification restricted, BGX detected directive. Catherine, I'm afraid further analysis has yielded no viable alternatives to mitigate the risks in your proposed hypothetical experimentation. I have, however, attached the synopsis of my team's findings as well as the relevant case studies. Perhaps you will find it, if I can get to the page, perhaps you will find them useful. I hope it is a hypothetical study. The use of bonobos in your proposal is troublesome. These animals are expensive and rare now since they are no longer bred in captivity. I would hate to see such valuable specimens wasted in some Section 3 projects. Best, YJ. She winced at the veiled rebuke in the Admiral's communique. He had never approved of her decision to work with the Office of Naval Intelligence, and made his disappointment with his star pupil evident every time she visited Hopeful. It was hard enough to justify the morality of the course she was about to embark upon. Jeromy's disapproval only made her decision more difficult. Dr. Halsey gritted her teeth and returned to the report. Synopsis of chemical biological risks. Warning, the following procedures are classified Level 3 experimental. Primate test subjects must be cleared through UNSC Quartermaster and General Office Code, OBF 3.4. Follow Gamma Code Biohazard Disposal Protocol. Number 1. Carbide ceramic ossification. Advanced material grafting onto skeletal structures to make bones virtually unbreakable. Recommended coverage not to exceed 3% total bone mass because significant white blood cell necrosis, specific risk for pre- and near post-pubescent adolescents, skeletal growth spurts may cause irreplaceable bone pulverization. See attached case studies. Number 2. Muscular enhancement injections. Protein complex is injected intramuscularly to increase the tissue density and decrease lactase recovery time. Risk: 5% of test subjects experience a fatal cardiac volume increase. Number 3. Catalytic thyroid implant. Plantanium pellet containing human growth hormone catalyst is implanted into the thyroid to boost growth of skeletal and muscle tissues. Risk: rare instances of elephantitis, suppressed sexual drive. Number 4. Octuple capillary reversal. Submergence and boosted blood vessel flow beneath the rods and cones of a subject's retina produced a marked visual perception increase. Risks are retinal rejection and detachment. Permanent blindness. See attached autopsy reports. Number 5. Superconducting fibrification of neural dendrites. Altercation of bioelectro... I can read, I swear I can. Altercation of bioelectrical nerve transduction to shielded electronic transduction. 300% increase in subjects' reflexes. Anecdotal evidence of marked increase in intelligence, memory, and creativity. Risk: significant instances of Parkinson's disease and Fletcher's syndrome. End file. Press enter to open linked attachments. Dr. Halsey closed the file. She erased all traces of it, sent Deja to track the file pathways all the way back to Hopeful and destroy Admiral Jeromy's notes and files relative to this incident. She removed her glasses and pinched the bridge of her nose. "I'm sorry," Deja said. "I too had hoped there would be some new processes to lower the risks." Dr. Halsey sighed. "I have doubts, Deja. I thought the reasons so compelling when we first started Project Spartan. Now I just don't know. I have been over the only projections of outer colony stability 3 times, Doctor. Their conclusion is correct. Massive rebellion within 20 years, unless drastic military action is taken. And you know how drastic the military action the brass would like. The Spartans are our only option to avoid overwhelming civilian losses. They will be the perfect pinpoint strike force. They can prevent a civil war. Only if they survive to fulfill that mission," Dr. Halsey countered. "We should delay the procedures. More research needs to be done. We could use the time to work on Mjolnir. We need time to..." There's another reason to proceed expeditiously, Deja said. Although I am loath to bring this to your attention, I must. If the Office of Naval Intelligence detects a delay in their prize project, you will likely be replaced by someone who harbors fewer doubts, and regrettably for the children, most likely someone less qualified. I hate this. Dr. Halsey got up and strode to the fire exit. And sometimes, Deja, I hate you too. She left the observation room. Mendez was waiting for her in the hallway. Walk with me, Chief, she said. He followed her without a word as they took the stairs to the pre-op wing of the hospital. They entered room 117. John lay in bed and an IV drip was attached to his arm. His head had been shaved and incision vectors had been lasered onto his entire body. Despite these indignities, Dr. Halsey marveled at what a spectacular physical specimen he had grown into. 14 years old, and he had the body of an 18-year-old. Olympic athlete and the mind of equal of any Naval Academy honors graduate. Dr. Halsey forced the best smile she could muster. How are you feeling? I'm fine, ma'am, John replied groggily. The nurse said the sedation would take effect soon. I'm fighting it to see how long I can stay awake. His eyelids fluttered. It's not easy. John spotted Mendez, and he struggled to sit up and salute, but failed. I know this is one of the chief's exercises, but I don't know what the twist is. Can you tell me, Dr. Halsey, just this time, how do I win? Mendez looked away. Dr. Halsey leaned closer to John as he closed his eyes and started to breathe deeply. I'll tell you how to win, John, she whispered. You have to survive. And that's end of chapter 6, and with that, I got my water bottle, and I'll check in on the comments, make sure things are going smoothly with all of that. Let's see if I can even get this open. And then, refreshing water with a little bit of enhancement in there. Keep me awake, keep me breathing. And a rag to get moisture off my face, because that happens sometimes. So I'm going to check comments here real quick, see what's going on. All the way back. Woohoo, here we go. They experimented on monkeys first. Yeah, I know. Not spider monkers. Oh, you guys are commenting. I love it. Fighting the sleep drugs. What a champ. You know, I fight them all the time. And I stay awake. Sometimes I put on my armor and just sit here because, you know, there's nothing I can do. Can't go out. This databed has me envious. It's expensive. Yeah, I'm still paying it off no matter how much the UNSC pays me. I gotta admit, it's expensive. Are you guys ready for chapter 7? Because I sure am. So, without further ado, I'll sit up a little bit more so you guys can see me and in my basking glory. Chapter 7, 0 hours, March 30th, 2525, military calendar. UNSC carrier Atlas en route to the Lambda Serpentis system. And so we commit to the bodies of our fallen brothers to space. Mendez solemnly closed his eyes for a moment. The ceremony completed. He pressed a control, and the ash canisters moved slowly into the ejection tubes and the void beyond. John stood rigidly in attention. The carrier's missile launch bays, normally cramped, overcrowded, and bustling with activity, were unusually quiet. The Atlas firing deck had been cleared of munitions and crew. Long, unadorned black banners now hung from the bay's overhead gantries. Honors, 10 Hut, Mendez barked. John and the other surviving Spartans saluted in unison. Duty, Mendez said. Honor and self-sacrifice. Death does not diminish these qualities in a soldier. We shall remember. A series of thumps resounded through the Atlas hull as canisters were hurled into space. And once again, there we go. The view screen flickered and displayed with a field of stars. The canisters appeared one by one, quickly falling behind the carrier as it continued on its course. John watched. With each of the stainless steel cylinders that drifted by, he felt he was losing a part of himself. It felt like leaving his people behind. Mendez's face might have well been chiseled from a stone for all the emotion it showed. He finished his protracted salute and then said, "Crewmen dismissed." Not everything had been lost. John glanced around with the launch chamber. Sam, Kelly, and 30 others stood in attention in their black dress uniforms. They had made it unharmed through the last mission. Wasn't quite the right word, more or less. There were a dozen others, though, who had lived, but were no longer soldiers. It hurt John to look at them. Fahad sat in a wheelchair, shaking uncontrollably. Kirk and Renee were in neutral buoyancy gel tanks, breathing through respirators. Their bones had been so twisted they no longer looked human. There were others still alive, but with injuries so critical they could not be moved. Orderlies pushed Fahad and the other injured towards the elevator. John strode towards them and stopped, blocking their path. "Stand fast, crewman," he demanded. "Where are you taking my men?" The orderly halted and his eyes widened. He swallowed and then said, Sir? I have my orders, sir." "Squad leader," Mendez called out. "A moment." "Stay," John told the orderly and marched to face Chief Mendez. "Yes, sir." "Let them go," Mendez said quietly. "They can't fight anymore. They don't belong here." John inadvertently glanced at the view screen and the long line of canisters as they shrank in the distance. "What will happen to my men?" "The Navy takes care of its own," Mendez replied, and lifted his chin a little higher. "They may no longer be the fastest or the strongest soldiers, but they still have sharp minds. They can still plan missions, analyze data, troubleshoot ops." John exhaled a sigh of relief. "That's all any of us can ask for, sir. A chance to serve." He turned to face Fahad and the others, snapped to the attention and saluted. Fahad managed to raise one shaking arm and returned the salute. The orderlies wheeled them away. John looked at what remained of his squad. None of them had moved since the memorial ceremony. They were waiting for the next mission. "Our orders, sir?" John asked. 2 days full bed rest, squad leader. Then microgravity physical therapy aboard the Atlas until you recover from the side effects of your augmentation. Side effects. John flexed his hand. He was clumsy now. Sometimes he could barely walk without falling. Dr. Halsey had assured him that these side effects were a good sign. Your brain must relearn how to move your body with faster reflexes and stronger muscles, she told him. But his eyes hurt, and they bled a little in the morning, too. He had constant headaches. Every bone in his body ached. John didn't understand any of this. He only knew that he had a duty to perform, and now he feared he wouldn't be able to. "Is that all, sir?" he asked Mendez. "No," the chief replied. "Deja will be running your squad through the dropship pilot simulator as soon as they are up to it. And," he added, "if they're up for the challenge." She wanted to cover some more organic chemistry and complex algebra. "Yes, sir," John replied. "We're up to the challenge." Good. John continued to stand fast. "Was there something else, squad leader?" John furrowed his brow, hesitated, and then finally said, "I was squad leader. The last mission was therefore my responsibility, and members of my squad died. What did I do wrong?" Mendez stared at John with his impenetrable black eyes. He glanced at the squad, then back to John. "Walk with me." He led John to the view screen, stood and watched as the last of the canisters vanished into the darkness. "A leader must be ready to send the soldiers under his command to their deaths," Mendez said without turning a face to John. "You do this because your duty to the UNSC supersedes your duty to yourself or even your crew." John looked away from the view screen. He couldn't look at the emptiness no more. He didn't want to think of his teammates, friends, who were like brothers and sisters to him, forever lost. "It is acceptable," Mendez said, "to spend their lives if necessary." He finally turned and met John's gaze. "It is not acceptable, however, to waste those lives. Do you understand the difference?" "I believe I understand, sir." "But which was it on this last mission? Lives spent or lives wasted?" Mendez turned back towards the blackness of space and didn't answer. 0430 hours, April 22nd, 2525 military calendar. UNSC carrier Atlas on patrol in the Lambda Serpentis system. John oriented himself as he entered the gym. From the stationary corridor, it was easy to see that this section of the Atlas rotated. Like other ships of this age, acceleration gave the circular walls a resemblance of gravity. Unlike the other portions of the data carrier, however, this section wasn't cylindrical, but rather a segmented cone. The outer portion was wider and rotated more slowly than the narrower inner portion, simulating gravitational forces from 1/4 to 2 gravities along the length of the gym. There were free weights, punching bags and speed bags, a boxing ring, and machines to stretch and tone every muscle group. No one else was up this early. He had the place to himself. John started with his arm curls, went to the center section, calibrated at 1G, and picked up a 20-kilogram dumbbell. It felt wrong. Too light. The spin must have been off. He set the weights down and picked up a 40-kilogram set. That one felt right. For the last 3 weeks, the Spartans had gone through a daily routine of stretching, isometric exercises, light sparring drills, and lots of eating. They were under orders to consume 5 high-protein meals a day. After every meal of the day, they had to report to the ship's medical bay for a series of mineral and vitamin injections. John was looking forward to getting back to Reach and his normal routine. There were only 32 other soldiers left in his squad. 30 candidates had washed out of the Spartan program. They died during augmentation process. The other dozen, suffering from the side effects of the process, had been permanently reassigned within the Office of Naval Intelligence. He missed them all, but he and the others had to go on. They had to recover and prove themselves all over again. John wished Chief Mendez had warned him. He could have prepared. Maybe that was the trick to the last mission, to learn to be prepared for anything. He would never let his guard down. He took a seat at the leg machine, set it to the maximum weight, but it felt too light. He moved to the high G end of the gym. Things felt normal again. John worked every machine and then moved to a speed bag, a leather ball attached to the floor and ceiling by a thick elastic band. There were only certain allowed frequencies at which the bag could be hit, or it gravitated chaotically. His fist jabbed forward, and I closed out of the page. His fist jabbed forward, cobra quick, and struck. The speed bag moved but slowly, like it was underwater. Far too slowly, considering how hard he had hit it. The tension on the line must be turned way down. He twanged the line and it hummed. It was very tight. Was everything broken in this room? He pulled a pin from the locking collar on the bench press. John walked to the center section, supposedly 1G. He held the pin a meter off the deck and dropped it. It clattered on the deck. It looked as if it had fallen normally, but somehow it also looked slow to John. He set the timer on his watch and dropped the pin again. 45 hundredths of a second. 1 meter in about a half a second. He forgot the formula for distance and acceleration, so he ran through the calculus and re-derived the equation. He even did the square root. He frowned. He had always struggled with math before. The answer was a gravitational acceleration of 9.8 meters per second squared, 1 standard G. So the room was rotating correctly. He was out of calibration. His experiment was cut short. 4 men then entered into the gym. They were out of uniform, wearing only shorts and boots. Their heads were cleanly shaven, and they were all heavily muscled, lean, and fit. The largest of the 4 was taller than John, Scars covered one side of his face. John could tell they were special forces. Orbital drop shock troopers. Jumpers and feet first into hell. Hell jumpers, the infamous 105th. John had overheard mess hall chatter about them. They had a reputation for success and for brutality, even against fellow soldiers. John gave them a polite nod. They just brushed past him and started on the high-gravity free weights. The large ODST lifted the bar of the bench press. He struggled, and the bar wavered unsteadily. The iron plates on the right end slid off and fell to the deck. The opposite end of the bar tilted, and he dropped the weight, almost crushing his spotter's foot. Startled by the noise, John jumped up. "What the—" The big ODST stood and glared at the locking collar that had slipped off. "Someone took the pin," he growled and turned to John. John picked up the pin. "The error was mine," he said and stepped forward. "My apologies." The 4 ODSTs moved forward as one towards John. The big guy with the scars stood a hand's breadth away from John's nose. "Why don't you take that pin and shove it, meat?" he said, grinning. "Or better yet, maybe I should make you eat it." He nodded to his friends. John only knew 3 ways to react to people. If they were his superior officers, he obeyed them. If they were part of his squad, he helped them. And if they were a threat, he neutralized them. So when the men surrounding him moved, he hesitated. Not because he was afraid, but because these men could have fallen into any of John's 3 categories. He didn't know their rank. They were fellow servicemen in the UNSC, but at the moment, they didn't seem friendly. The 2 men flanking him grabbed John's biceps. The one behind him tried to slip an arm around his neck. John hunched his shoulders and tucked his chin into his chest so he couldn't be choked. He whipped his right elbow over the hand holding him, pinned to its side, and then straight punched the man and broke his nose. The other 3 reacted, tightening their grips and stepping closer, but like the drop pin, they moved slowly. John ducked and slipped out of the unsuccessful headlock. He spun free, breaking the grasp of a man on his left at the same time. "Stand down!" a booming voice echoed across the gym. A sergeant stepped into the gym and strode toward them. Unlike Mendez, who was fit and trim and was always serious, this man's stomach bulged over his belt, and he looked bemused. John snapped to attention, and the others stood there and continued to glare at John. "Sarge," the man with the bleeding nose said, "we were just—" "Did I ask you a question?" the sergeant barked. "No, Sergeant," the man replied. The sergeant eyed John, then the ODSTs. "If you are all so eager to fight, get in this ring and go for it." "Sir," John said. He went into the boxing ring, slipped through the ropes, and stood there waiting. This was starting to make sense. It was a mission. John had received orders from a superior officer, and the 4 men were now targets. The big ODST pushed through the ropes, and the others gathered to watch. "I'm going to rip you into pieces, meat," he grunted through clenched teeth. John sprang off his back foot and launched his entire weight behind his first strike. His fist smashed into the man's wide chin. John's left hand followed and impacted on the soldier's jaw. The man's hands came up. John stepped in, pinned one of the man's arms to his chest, and followed through with a hook to his floating ribs. Bones broke. The man staggered back. John took a short step, brought his heel down on the man's knee. 3 more punches, and the man was against the ropes. Then he stopped moving. His arm and leg and neck tilted at unnatural angles. The 3 other men moved. The one with a bloody nose grabbed an iron bar. John didn't need orders this time. 3 attackers at once. He had to take them out before they surrounded him. He might be faster, but he didn't have eyes in the back of his head. The man with the iron bar swung a vicious blow at John's ribs. John sidestepped, grabbed the man's hand, and clamped it into the bar. He twisted the bar and crushed the bones of his attacker's wrist. John snapped a side kick towards the second man, caught him in the groin, crushing the soft organs and breaking his target's pelvis. John pulled the bar free, whipped around, and caught the third man at the neck, hitting him so hard the ODST was propelled over the ropes. "At ease, number 117, Chief Petty Officer Mendez barked. John obeyed and dropped the bar. Like the pin, it seemed again to take too long for the impromptu weapon to hit the deck. The ODSTs lay crumpled on the ground, either unconscious or dead. Mendez, at the far end of the gym, strode towards the boxing ring. The sergeant stood with his mouth open. "Chief Mendez, sir." He snapped a crisp salute. "What are you—" He turned to John, his eyes widened, and murmured, "He's one of them, isn't he?" "Medics are on their way," Mendez said calmly. He stepped closer to the sergeant. "There are 2 intel officers waiting for you in ops. They'll debrief you." He stepped back. "I suggest you report to them immediately." "Yes, sir," the sergeant said. He almost ran out of the gym. He looked once over his shoulder at John, and then he moved even faster. "Your workout is over for today," Mendez told John. John saluted and left the ring. A team of medics entered with stretchers and rushed towards the boxing ring. "Permission to speak, sir," John said. Mendez nodded. Were those men part of a mission? Were they targets or teammates? John knew that this had to be some sort of a mission. The chief had been too close for it to be a coincidence. "You engaged and neutralized a threat," Mendez replied. "That action seems to have answered your question, squad leader." John wrinkled his forehead as he thought it through. "I followed the chain of command," he said. "The sergeant told me to fight. I was threatened and in imminent danger. But they were still UNSC Special Forces, fellow soldiers." Mendez lowered his voice. "Not every mission has simple objectives or comes to a logical conclusion. Your priorities are to follow the orders in your chain of command and then preserve your life, then the lives of your team. Is that clear?" "Sir," John said. "Yes, sir." He glanced back at the ring. Blood was seeping into the canvas mat. John had an odd feeling in the pit of his stomach. He hit the showers and let the blood rinse off of him. He felt strangely sorry for the men he had killed. But he knew his duty. The chief had even been unusually verbose in order to clarify the matter. Follow orders and keep himself and his team safe. That's all he had to focus on. John didn't give the incident in the gym another thought. Take a deep breath, everybody. That is the 2 chapters that I have been assigned and tasked with reading. And I hope you guys enjoyed. I definitely did. I'm going to be suiting up a couple more times this week once it gets a little bit warmer. Temperatures are dropping. It's not fun, but I have some things I'd like to do. And for one special member of the 405th, I am doing a walk for her and for others in boots, and that's going to be exciting. So again, this is Spartan Jeff 293. You can check me out at JeffN02 on 405th.com. I also have a outdated Instagram, and it's right there below, Nord0205. Thank you guys so much for checking in, and my computer just went dark. I hope I'm still streaming. I think I am. Of course it wants to do this as I'm streaming. Alright, yeah, we're still streaming, I think. But yeah, you're welcome, guys. Let's see. Well done. Thank you. You're welcome, everybody. Noble of Death, thank you. Don't forget to take photos after in your suit. I will definitely do that. I'll probably even take some video, too. Get some actual reports done. Zedi, thank you very much. Noble Cartera. Now come join us in Discord. Definitely will. Definitely will. Alright, guys. I'm signing off for the night. This is my wonderful helmet. But, I don't know. Signing off.